I had always believed weddings were sacred, a moment suspended in time, a rare breath where everything feels exactly as it should be. That's what I told myself as I stood in the bridal suite, smoothing down the lace on my dress. My fiancé, Darren, was waiting at the altar. My father, Harold, had just whispered through the door that it was time. I smiled. For once, I truly felt like things were aligning. I had done everything right. Steady career, responsible choices, and now marrying the man I believed I could trust. My mother, Lorraine, hadn't come to see me before the ceremony. Not once. That should have told me something, but I was too full of nerves to question it. Lorraine had always been unpredictable, sharp-tongued, theatrical when the spotlight found her. But I never thought she'd choose my wedding for one of her scenes. The ceremony itself was simple and beautiful. Soft music, vows we wrote ourselves, the sound of held breath among the pews. My sister, Evelyn, sat in the second row, tightly gripping her husband's hand. I caught her eye, and she gave me a small nod, as if to say, "You made it." And I had. Then came the reception. Champagne flutes clinked, laughter swelled. Darren held my hand under the table. For a moment, I relaxed. When my father tapped his glass with a fork to announce Lorraine's speech, I smiled, expecting some emotional toast full of awkward jokes and old stories. Instead, she stood up and said, "We never told you. You were adopted." The room went silent. I froze. She laughed, and added, "Well, they deserved to know, didn't they?" The laughter didn't catch. People looked around, unsure whether to laugh too, or cry, or run. My heart pounded in my chest. Darren squeezed my hand, but I pulled away. I stood up, legs shaking beneath the weight of my dress, and walked out. No one followed. Not Evelyn, not Darren, not even Lorraine. I locked myself in the suite upstairs, staring at my reflection in the mirror. I looked like a ghost in white. My phone buzzed with messages I didn't read. I sat for hours until the music died down and the noise of guests vanished into the cold night. But I didn't cry. I called a lawyer the next morning. The first thing the lawyer asked was, "Do you have any reason to believe your mother was telling the truth?" And I realized I didn't. Not one. Lorraine had always had a flair for cruelty. She liked to wound with words, usually under the guise of just being honest. But that night, it hadn't felt like one of her typical stabs. There was something else behind it. Not venom, something colder, calculated. I hired the firm immediately. They promised discretion and speed. I asked them to find my birth records if they existed. Meanwhile, Darren and I returned to our shared home the next day in silence. He didn't mention the wedding, didn't bring up my mother. He just poured a glass of scotch and sat on the couch, flipping through sports highlights as if nothing had happened. I sat across from him and asked quietly, "Why didn't you come after me?" He paused, drink halfway to his lips. "You needed space." That wasn't what I needed. Not then. Not when the ground had been ripped out from beneath me. I watched him for a while, his shoulders relaxed, his face calm. He hadn't even undone his tie. "Do you believe her?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then finally, with a shrug, "Does it matter? You're still you." But I didn't feel like me. And he didn't look at me the same way. I didn't know if it was pity or indifference, but either way, it felt like a door quietly closing between us. Over the next few days, I stayed home, ignored calls. Evelyn came by once, dropped off a gift bag of untouched wedding favors and an envelope with our parents' wedding photo. "Mom's not sorry," she said at the door. "She thinks she did you a favor." "A favor?" "She said now you know the truth, and that you'll stop pretending you were ever part of us." The words hit harder than I expected. I had always known Lorraine favored Evelyn, but I hadn't realized she resented me. "I don't understand," I whispered. Why now? Why there? Evelyn hesitated, then said, maybe because she knew it would hurt the most. Before I could ask more, she left. That night, I opened the old photo album I kept in my closet. It was full of childhood snapshots, me on the swing set, Harold holding me at the beach, birthday candles, ballet recitals. All of them felt like paper-thin lies. The faces I had once thought of as home suddenly looked like strangers pretending to care. The lawyer called 3 days later. We found something, she said. My chest tightened. Go on. You were adopted. It was a private arrangement. No agency, no foster care. Director. You were only a few weeks old. My throat went dry. My mother, Lorraine, did she adopt me? She and your father signed the papers, but your birth mother's identity was sealed. There's a confidentiality clause. We may be able to challenge it in court. I hung up and sat still for a long time. Lorraine hadn't lied. But why tell me this way? I told myself I'd confront my father in person. Harold had always been the quiet one, the buffer between Lorraine's storms and the rest of us. I convinced myself he'd have answers, maybe even remorse. But when I pulled into my parents' driveway and saw him in the garden, pruning roses like nothing had shifted, my stomach turned. He waved when he saw me. Not hesitantly, not guiltily. Just a wave, like I was dropping by for coffee. We sat on the porch. The silence stretched. Dad, I said. I know. He didn't ask what I meant. He didn't pretend. He just nodded once, slowly. You were a beautiful baby, he said after a pause. Your mother, your birth mother, she couldn't keep you. Lorraine, she wanted another child. Evelyn was 5 already. We'd tried for years. And when Lorraine found out about a girl giving up her baby, she insisted. I clenched my fists. And you never thought I deserved to know? He looked away. We always meant to tell you. But time passed, and Lorraine said it didn't matter anymore. You were ours. Then why did she humiliate me? He took a long breath. I think because she never believed you were truly hers. That cut deeper than I expected. I drove away before I said something I'd regret. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Something inside me was hardening and fast. Back home, Darren was on a call when I walked in. His voice dropped when he saw me. Hold on, he told whoever it was, then pressed mute. You okay? I just spoke to my father. He nodded, like he already knew what I was going to say. So it's true then. I waited for him to say more. A hug, a kind word. Anything. But he turned back to his laptop and said, We should think about canceling the honeymoon. I stood there stunned. That's all you have to say? He looked up again, annoyed now. I'm sorry, but what do you want from me? I'm not your therapist. There it was. Later that night, after Darren had gone to bed, I sat at the dining room table with a glass of wine and printed copies of my adoption paperwork. A name was blacked out. My birth mother's name. I stared at that thick black line, like it was a wound that refused to close. I called the lawyer the next morning. I want to challenge the confidentiality, I said. Take it to court if we have to. She hesitated. You need to know, doing so may open doors you can't close again. Sometimes birth parents don't want to be found. I don't care, I said. I need the truth. A pause. We'll prepare the motion. 2 days later, Evelyn showed up again. Her eyes were puffy, like she hadn't slept. I think you should know, she said. Mom's been talking to people. She's spinning this like you ruined the wedding, that you stormed out and embarrassed her. I laughed bitterly. That tracks. She's saying you were always unstable, that you didn't appreciate what you had. I crossed my arms. Did you know, Evelyn? Before the wedding? She didn't answer right away. Then quietly, "Yes. I found out years ago. She told me not to tell you." I stared at her. I couldn't even speak. "She said it would destroy the family if you knew," Evelyn whispered. I shook my head. She destroyed it anyway. The first court date to challenge the confidentiality came faster than I expected. I sat beside my lawyer in a silent courtroom, the thick tension wrapping around me like wool. Darren didn't come. He claimed a work meeting, some startup pitch he couldn't reschedule. I didn't ask twice. I didn't even ask once. The judge listened quietly as my lawyer presented the case, that I had the right to know who brought me into this world, especially now that the truth had been weaponized against me. My file was sealed under a clause written decades ago, one that hadn't accounted for the psychological damage of secrecy. The judge took it under advisement. "I'll issue a decision within the week," she said. I stepped out of the courtroom, feeling like I'd aged 10 years. That evening, Lorraine called. I nearly let it ring out, but something in me needed to hear her voice. "I hope you're proud," she said flatly. "Proud of what?" "Dragging the family through court, turning your life into a soap opera." I laughed bitterly. "You did that at the wedding." She didn't answer right away. "You think this is about some grand truth? It was about putting you in your place." Those words stuck, burned. "I gave you everything," she continued, "and still, you always wanted more. More attention, more praise, like nothing was ever enough for you." "I wanted to belong," I said. "You never did." I hung up. My hand trembled, not from sadness, but fury. Later that week, the judge granted the petition. I would finally learn the name of my birth mother. The unsealed file arrived in a plain envelope. No ceremony, no drama, just truth. Black ink on white paper. Her name was Janice Rowe, age 19 when she gave me up. No address, no contact details, just a brief note. She requested no contact, struggled emotionally, lacked family support. I stared at the paper, her name blurring. Janice, a ghost with my blood. I gave the file to my lawyer. "Find her." At home, Darren was waiting. "You're late," he said, not looking up from his phone. "I got the name," I said. "That's great," he replied without emotion. "Her name is Janice." He nodded once, then went back to texting. I sat down across from him. "What are we doing?" He looked up finally, blinking like I'd interrupted something. "What?" "This," I said. "Us. You don't ask how I'm feeling. You don't show up to court. Do you even want to be married?" He leaned back in his chair. "Honestly? You've been acting like a victim since the wedding. It's exhausting." His words hit like a slap. I stood. "Then maybe we should take a break." He shrugged. "Whatever you want." And just like that, the marriage I thought I wanted shattered. Quietly, without resistance. I texted Evelyn later. "I have a name." She called immediately. "Do you want me to come over?" "No," I said. "I think I need to do this part alone." Because somewhere out there, Janice Rowe was real. And for the first time in my life, I might finally be getting close to my truth. It took my lawyer's investigator 4 days to find her. Janice Rowe, now 41, living in a modest apartment in Ohio, working at a veterinary clinic. Never married, no children listed. She'd never left the state. They handed me a file, basic, but filled with enough to make her real. I stared at her photo, a candid shot from social media. Her with a gray tabby cat perched on her shoulder, smiling faintly. My smile. The same shape around the eyes. I booked a flight that night. I didn't tell Darren. I didn't owe him that anymore. The morning I arrived, the sky was gray and heavy. I stood outside the clinic for 15 minutes, heart pounding. 1,000 things ran through my mind. What if she denied it? What if she slammed the door? What if she looked right through me? But when I walked in, she was there. Tall, pale, dark hair, tied up in a loose bun. She looked tired, worn in that way women get when they've carried their lives entirely on their own shoulders. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was soft. My knees nearly buckled. "I think," I cleared my throat. "My name is Ava. I believe you're my birth mother." She froze. Her hand dropped to the counter. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then, quietly, she said, "I knew this day might come." We stepped outside. She lit a cigarette with shaking hands and leaned against the wall like she needed it to hold her up. "You look like her," she said suddenly. "Her? The woman who took you." My blood chilled. "Lorraine." She nodded. "I didn't want to give you up, Ava. I didn't. But they made it impossible." "Who?" I asked. She looked away. "I was staying at a women's home, pregnant. No money, no support. Lorraine came to speak there. Said she was looking to adopt. Said she could give you everything I couldn't." My stomach twisted. "She singled me out. Said she'd help with medical costs. That I could see you once in a while. But once I signed the papers, she vanished. Changed numbers. Disappeared." I clenched my fists. "She lied to you. She lied to both of us." I sat beside her. She didn't cry. I didn't either. There was too much space between us. Years of silence. But in that moment, I felt something shift. I wasn't abandoned. I was taken. She hesitated before speaking again. "I used to look for photos online. Try to find you. But they never posted anything. I thought maybe you didn't even know." "I didn't. Not until my wedding." She told the whole room, as a joke. Janice covered her mouth. "Oh my God!" "It broke everything." She looked at me. "I'm sorry, for all of it. If I could change it." "You don't need to," I said quietly. "You just needed to be here. And you are." We sat there in silence until her shift resumed. She gave me her number. "I'd like to get to know you, if you'll let me." "I want that," I said. And I meant it. That night, I checked into a hotel and turned off my phone. I didn't want to hear from Darren, or Evelyn, or anyone. For once, I wanted to be alone with truth, even if it was painful. I stood in the mirror. Same eyes as Janice, same chin, same curve in the shoulders. I saw me. Not Lorraine's daughter, not a wife ignored, just Ava. And for the first time in weeks, I slept. I flew back home 2 days later, with Janice's number saved in my phone and a new weight in my chest. Not a burden, but something solid, something real. When I unlocked the door to the house, the silence hit me harder than I expected. Darren wasn't there. A note sat on the kitchen counter, scribbled in the handwriting I used to find so steady. "Went to stay at Mark's for a while. Let me know when you've sorted everything out." Sorted everything out? I tore the note in half. I called a divorce attorney the next morning. He didn't answer when I tried to tell him directly. Didn't respond to the email either. But 3 hours after the lawyer filed the preliminary paperwork, Darren's response came in a single, passive-aggressive text. "Guess this makes it easier. Good luck." That was it. No fight, no defense, no regret. It was almost worse than a dramatic ending. I didn't even get anger, just boredom. But I didn't have time to dwell. Because Lorraine showed up at my door that afternoon. I opened it, and for a second, neither of us said a word. She looked older than I remembered. Or maybe it was just that I'd stopped seeing her through the lens of daughterhood. "Well," she said, "I assume you've spoken to her." "You mean Janice?" She flinched, just for a moment. "So it's true. You went running to the woman who gave you up." "She didn't give me up. You took me from her." A twitch at her jaw. "Don't rewrite history just because it suits your narrative now." "My narrative?" I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "You lied to her. You lied to me. You paraded me around like a trophy and then discarded me the moment I wanted the truth. Lorraine's eyes narrowed. She was a girl with no money and no direction. I saved you. No, I said quietly. You saved yourself. You wanted control. You wanted a child who wouldn't question you. And when I did, you punished me. She folded her arms. Are you going to announce this to the world now? Tell your sob story? Make me the villain in some emotional melodrama? I don't need to, I said. You did that to yourself at my wedding. Her expression finally cracked. Her voice wavered. You were never grateful. I was never yours, I whispered. She blinked, hard. I thought she might slap me. But instead, she stepped back, fumbled for her car keys, and left without another word. That night, Evelyn called. I ignored it. She texted after. I didn't know it was that bad. I swear, I want to talk. I didn't know if I wanted to talk. Instead, I called Janice. She answered on the second ring. I'm thinking of coming back out there soon, I said. She didn't ask why. She just said, You're always welcome. We sat in silence on the phone for a while. And in that silence, I finally began to understand something I never had before. Family isn't just blood or even shared years. It's honesty. It's presence. It's who shows up. And Lorraine had spent my entire life proving she wasn't family at all. I didn't respond to Evelyn's message for 3 days. Not because I wanted to punish her. I just didn't know how to hear her voice without tasting the betrayal again. I had spent so many years thinking she was my anchor, only to realize she'd been drifting with the same current Lorraine had created. Silence wasn't neutral anymore. It had a weight. It chose sides. But on the fourth morning, she showed up. No warning, no text. Just her standing outside my front door in a sweater too thin for the weather and a paper bag clutched in her hands. I opened the door, already tired. You could have called. I know, she said, but I figured you wouldn't answer. We sat in the kitchen. She placed the bag on the table and pulled out 2 of my favorite scones from our childhood bakery. I hated how thoughtful it was. How easy it would have been to forgive her if that was all it took. I didn't know, she said, staring at her hands. Not all of it. I knew you were adopted. I didn't know how Lorraine found Janice or what promises were made. I swear, you never thought to tell me. I thought she'd tell you. I thought maybe she'd mellow out, or, I don't know, that it wasn't my place. I stared at her. You were the only person who could have made it your place. She blinked, eyes welling up. I didn't want to lose what little peace we had in the family. I've been keeping Mom calm since we were kids. That's what I did. That's what I always did. And what did I get? I said quietly. I spent my entire life trying to earn a seat at a table I never belonged to. Evelyn cried then. Really cried. The kind that makes your shoulders shake and your voice crack. I'm sorry, she said. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I don't want to be one more person who vanishes from your life. Her words sat between us like a test, and I didn't know what I was supposed to pass. I'm not ready, I said, but I'm not slamming the door either. She nodded, wiped her eyes, and left the bag on the table. They're still warm, she said before walking out. That night, I drafted a letter. Not to Lorraine, not to Darren, to myself. It began, Dear Ava, I'm sorry I didn't protect you sooner. I poured everything into it. The anger, the confusion, the grief for a childhood that wasn't what I thought. And when I was done, I folded it and slid it into a drawer. Not for anyone else to read, but because I needed to hear it from me. The next day, I booked a flight to Ohio. Janice picked me up from the airport this time. She had cleaned out the guest room, bought a second coffee mug, left fresh towels folded on the bed, like it was a hotel. She didn't try too hard. That's what made it easy. Over dinner, I asked her if she ever regretted naming me Ava. She smiled. I didn't name you. Lorraine didn't like the one I picked. I froze. What was it? Lena. The word hit something deep in my chest. Not because I liked it better, but because it was mine. Or should have been. Do you want me to call you that? Janice asked gently. I shook my head. Number, but I want to remember it. She nodded. Fair. That night, she showed me a small box she'd kept all these years. Newspaper clippings, a copy of the hospital bracelet, a photo of me as a newborn. She said she kept it, like some people keep hope. I cried for the first time in weeks. And this time, it wasn't grief, it was relief. Janice and I settled into a quiet rhythm over the next several days. We cooked together, took long walks, and talked about everything except Lorraine. It wasn't avoidance, it was healing, like sunlight filtering through a forest after a long storm. One evening, while sorting through an old box of her college things, Janice pulled out a faded journal and hesitated. This was from the year I got pregnant, she said. I haven't opened it in decades. She handed it to me, but I didn't open it right away. It felt sacred, heavy with things that shaped us both. Later that night, in the guest room, I read it cover to cover. The entries were raw and aching, filled with hope one day and despair the next. She wrote about her fear, the isolation, how much she already loved the baby she hadn't met yet. And then there it was, an entry written the night after Lorraine visited the home for young mothers. There's a woman named Lorraine. She said all the right things. She has money, a husband, a stable home. She promised I could visit, that the door wouldn't be closed. It feels wrong, but I don't know what else to do. I keep hoping someone will stop me, that someone will say, wait, there's another way. But no one does. My heart ached for both of us, for the girl who was cornered into surrendering her child, and for the woman that child became, raised in a lie. The next morning, I called my lawyer again. I need to know if Lorraine's actions during the adoption could be challenged, I said. If what she did to Janice was legal, or just convenient. My lawyer sighed. Technically, it wasn't illegal. Morally, it's another story. But the laws around private adoptions at that time were murky. If you go public with this, it won't be about punishment. It'll be about exposure. That word stuck, exposure. That evening, I drafted a post, not for social media, for myself, for something. I spent 31 years believing I was someone else's daughter, that I had to earn love, prove my place, stay small to avoid shaking the ground I stood on. But I learned recently that the ground was never stable to begin with. And I wasn't small. I was stifled. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about reclamation. I found my voice in the very place I was once silenced, and I intend to keep using it. I didn't publish it, not yet. But I printed it out and taped it to the fridge in Janice's kitchen. Later, Janice smiled when she saw it. That's yours, she said. Every word. A few days later, Evelyn emailed me a photo. It was of me and her as little girls, sitting on the swing set. I looked at it for a long time. I didn't remember that day, but I remembered that feeling, wanting to belong, and for once, almost believing I did. She wrote, I was wrong. You were always part of us, even when they made you feel otherwise. I hope I can be a part of your new story, too. I stared at the screen and whispered, maybe. Not yes. Not number maybe. Because not all relationships deserve doors slammed. Some deserve space, cracks of light, room to grow. And this time, I would decide which ones were worth keeping. The morning the divorce finalized, I didn't feel relief. I felt something quieter. Like a window had been opened in a room I hadn't realized was suffocating me. There was no message from Darren, no attempt to fix what he let rot, just a document delivered by email, signed and sealed. I forwarded it to my lawyer and closed my laptop. Later that day, Janice and I drove to a nearby lake. We sat at the edge of the dock, feet dangling over the still water. "I'm thinking of moving," I said quietly. She turned to me. "Where?" "I don't know yet, but not back there. That house isn't mine anymore." "You could stay here," she said gently. "No pressure, just a home, if you want one." A lump rose in my throat. I never knew how much I wanted to hear that. She didn't push. She didn't plead. She just smiled and looked back at the water. That night, I unpacked the small suitcase I'd been living out of. For the first time in weeks, I folded my clothes into drawers. I laid a photo of myself and Janice, taken just yesterday, on the bedside table. It felt like the beginning of something, not a chapter, a whole new book. I sat on the porch that morning with a cup of coffee in my hands and Janice beside me, the sun rising through trees that whispered instead of screamed. "I think I'm going to publish it," I said. Janice looked at me, but didn't ask which it. She already knew. "The letter?" she asked gently. "The letter, the story, all of it." She gave a quiet nod. "Then do it. You've carried it alone long enough." That afternoon, I uploaded the post, along with a scanned copy of the sealed record, Lorraine's speech transcript from the wedding, and an open letter addressed not to my birth family, but to anyone who'd ever been told to sit down and smile while being erased. I didn't expect the response. Within hours, it spread. Not viral, but steady. I got messages from women I'd never met, telling me they'd been adopted under similar shadows. That they, too, had sat across dinner tables smiling for people who never saw them. Evelyn messaged me that night. "It was brave. And it was true. I'm proud of you. I hope one day you'll let me be part of your healing, too." I responded simply, "You already are. Just keep showing up." The next weekend, I returned to my old home one last time, not to move back, but to clear it out. I didn't expect Lorraine to be there, but she was. Standing in the foyer like nothing had changed. For once, she didn't look furious. She looked tired. "You've made quite a mess," she said, nodding toward my phone. "I cleaned one up," I said. There were no more battles to fight. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need her validation. She didn't stop me when I walked out with the last box. Janice met me at the curb. I handed her a worn photo frame, the one with my hospital bracelet Janice had saved. "I want this in your house," I said. "Our house," she corrected softly. I smiled. Weeks passed, then months. I didn't count them. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living. I took a part-time job at a local library. I enrolled in an online course for counseling. I wrote every morning. And sometimes, just sometimes, I answered messages from strangers looking for their voices. One message stood out. From a woman in Arizona. "How did you learn to let go of the anger?" I stared at it for a while before typing. I didn't let it go. I gave it purpose.